Hey guys, welcome back to another video in the r/entitledparents subreddit. I have two entitled parent stories for you today. One involving an anti-MasKaren that gets her well-deserved piece of karma for breathing on a scared old lady. And the second involving an entitled sister-in-law that seems to think she's entitled to some of OP's deceased grandma's belongings and gets her kids to call OP to collect said belongings on the day of the funeral. Yikes. With that being said, let's jump into these rage-inducing stories, shall we? Entitled parent decides to mess with me in the checkout line. I finally had my Karen in the Wild experience yesterday morning. I live in the southeastern US and we have a popular small box retailer here with a yellow sign and black letters. They're all over the rural south and in many places act as grocery and general stores to the community. I needed to stop and get an item for my vehicle before I ran morning errands, so I dropped in at our local neighborhood store, found the item and a couple of other things I wanted and got in line. I am very conscientious about wearing a mask when I go out and steer very clear of those who don't. The line was fairly long for a Saturday morning and I was then third or fourth customer in line. This store funnels all customers into a sort of tunnel lined with impulse purchases, lighters, candy, magazines, small toys, that sort of thing, for checkout, and there are 3 cashier stations along the line. Only one was manned at that point. The customer in front of me was a late 30-ish woman with a young daughter who looked to be 10 or so. This was EM, an okay kid. Kid wasn't so bad. She had an acute dog face mask, but EM wasn't wearing a mask at all. She was pushing a half-full cart of items. OK asks for a candy bar and EM says it's okay. OK reaches for a nearby bar of candy. Then EM starts looking at the candy, scanning the rows, and her eyes find what she wants near where I am standing. Luckily, the person behind me was not only standing at least 6 feet back, but had a cart between us as well. So as the EM came towards me, I started backing away. She kept coming closer and I kept backing up, which she noticed. When my butt hit the cart behind me, she smiled at me and said, "Looks like you're trapped," and kept coming towards me. Well, I walk with a cane. At that point, I raised the cane so that it was between us and said, "Please stop coming towards me. You aren't wearing a mask." She stopped and laughed, then said, "Are you going to hit me with your cane, old lady?" I glared at her and said, "If you come any closer, I will. I'm feeling very threatened." She laughed again, then put her hand up to her ear and said, "What? I couldn't hear you. Say again. Your mask is making it hard to understand you." And laughing. Then her daughter started laughing too. About that time, another employee came over to open the second register, which I was standing directly in front of. Usually they say, "I can help the next customer here," but instead she said, "I can ring you up, ma'am," to me. I put my purchases down on the counter and she reached for the first item to scan. EM said, "Hey, wait, I was next," and started backing up towards me again, with her cart in tow. The cashier said, "Ma'am, you have already passed me. The next cashier will have to take care of you." EM didn't like this, but turned back forward to see the first cashier had finished ringing up the customer in front of EM and had turned her station light off, signaling that she was closed. EM said, "Hey, where are you going? You haven't rung me up." The first cashier said, "Sorry, I'm scheduled for my break now, and I will get written up if I don't go on time," and walked away and out the door. EM is now fuming and turns back to the second cashier. EM waits for my cashier to be done with my purchase, then starts to back up again. This makes it impossible for me to leave as we are in that tunnel, and I said, "Ma'am, you are going to have to go forward and leave the tunnel so I can get out." She stops and says, "Oh, just squeeze by me. You act like I have the plague or something." I looked directly at her and said, "As far as I'm concerned, you do." She huffed and pushed her cart forward and out of the tunnel, and I was able to squeeze by her safely. Behind me, I heard the cashier start ringing up the customer behind me, who had a pretty full cart, and I turned and saw that the line behind me had 5 people in it now. The EM yelled, "Hey, I was next!" And as I was going out the door, she turned her buggy back into the tunnel the wrong way. Then I heard the cashier say, "Ma'am, you can't come back in here the wrong way. You have to get back in line." Unintelligible barking came from the EM as I went out the door. I admit it, I was grinning behind the mask. As I was getting into my vehicle, the first cashier was around the corner of the store having a smoke break. She finished her cigarette, put it in the ash post, and said, "I hate people like that. We love screwing with them. Sorry she bothered you." I laughed out loud at that point and said, "Hey, this will make a good story for Reddit." She laughed too and went on into the store. No idea what EM did after that, but I noticed as I passed her when I left the store that she was wearing a scrub top for a local pediatrician's office. Think I might make a phone call on Monday asking them how they feel about one of their staff terrorizing those in the community who choose to wear a mask and socially distance. Oh dear God, I hope this story isn't true. Please Lord, let it not be true. Just end it all now if this is true. The first thing, among many, that is shocking about this story is that Anti-MasKaren is deliberately going out of her way to put a senior who is high risk in danger. The second thing that makes me cringe is that she's showing this behavior to her daughter, and that daughter is laughing, which means, ugh, another future Karen on the horizon. The last shocking thing is that Karen works in pediatrics with children, which means her selfish, horrible attitude is not only around her own kid, but other kids all the time. This story and woman's behavior is so horrifying and disgusting. Glad though that the cashiers decided to mess with her. I'm sure they have to deal with these types of people all the time, so why not make some entertainment from it? Sister-in-law literally has her child call and ask for my grandmother's dolls the day of her funeral. So my grandmother collected dolls and we did it together for years. She then fell ill with lung cancer and we cared for her at home. I was working 32 hours a week and going to college full-time and watching her at night so my mom could rest. We received zero help from my siblings and no help from G's other kids, except an aunt who stayed with her for a week and called for us to come home early from the trip because she couldn't do it, even though she took care of her dead husband's mother and treated her like a queen. Fast forward to my G's passing. The day after G passed, my sister-in-law calls me and says, "What are you doing with G's dolls?" I say that they would be put away for safekeeping for now because we were in so much pain that I literally felt my heart physically hurting. We were so sad about G dying because she lived with us the whole time growing up. She then proceeds to tell me I need to let each girl pick one and take care of it, or maybe just give them to the girls. Because I was a grown woman. G had left me the dolls. I told her no, and she was beyond livid. The day of the funeral, I pick up the phone as we are literally walking to the door with coats on to leave, and her daughter calls me. Her daughter was about 5 or 6 at the time and could never even have formed to think of asking, and didn't even notice them when she did visit as a baby/toddler. She was made to ask for the dolls. I literally hear my sister-in-law in the background feeding her what to say. Hear her say that I would give it to her daughter because I wouldn't tell her no like I did the sister-in-law. I politely told my niece that I wasn't doing that right now and that they were too young to take care of them anyway, so that would be decided later. Then I asked to speak to the sister-in-law and tell her that it was inappropriate and she shouldn't have her daughter call because it set her up to be hurt. Sister-in-law was still mad because those are expensive dolls and there are too many for you to deserve to keep all of them. This is coming from the same woman that kept her kids away from my parents and ghosted them, and then sent the child over as she neared 18 to ask if my dad was going to put her in his and my mom's will. Really? I was so happy when my brother divorced her after she left a Dear John note on the table. She wanted to experiment basically because I never sowed my oats when I was young. From what I understand, she sowed plenty. They had been married for 17 years. Apparently, she married him for our family name and thought he would be rich because my dad drove a Lincoln and had a business, and she thought my brother would inherit everything. Apparently, she got tired of waiting. She was just plain entitled as a parent and as a person in general. Ugh, this one hurts me. I will say that the brother is partially to blame, as he didn't stop her from harassing his family and stayed with an evil gold digger for 17 years, as well as produced offspring with her. But I too have a dumb brother that's married to an emotionless, entitled girl, and I understand that love is blind. Glad though that OP's bro finally took the rose-colored glasses off and divorced her. As for OP, I read in the comments that she never gave the sister-in-law a single thing, and I'm so glad she didn't, because sister-in-law clearly doesn't care about the sentiment, and it's always all about the money with people like that, which makes me so sad. Also, I'm sorry if you could hear my cat in the background of that last story. She is a little cuckoo today and decided to have a meowing fest while I was recording. I guess Luna just wanted to say hi to you guys. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed those 2 entitled parent stories. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I truly appreciate when you do, and I will see you in the next Reddit story. Say bye, Luna.